Welcome, 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 ladies and gentlemen. It's another beautiful night here tonight, and I can't believe it. We are at the end of this beautiful program that we started almost 10 weeks ago, or approximately 10 weeks ago. It goes by that fast. Tonight, we have another beautiful episode of our mental health and resilience series at Empowerment Squared, and we're going to be talking about mental health and religion. And I'm so excited to have a great guest with us tonight in person of Yassine Dwyer, who is the Executive Director of the Muslim Chaplaincy of Toronto. Yassine, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us who you are and what you do.
First of all, thank you, Brother Leo, for the kind invitation. I'm very happy to be with you. Yes, my name is Yassine Dwyer, and I am the Executive Director of Muslim Chaplaincy of Toronto. We are an organization that provides counseling services, mentorship services, educational programs, and we do advocacy work for students and staff at the University of Toronto and Ryerson University. On a personal level, I've been a chaplain for almost 20 years. I began my work as a chaplain with the Correctional Service of Canada, working primarily with Muslim offenders in the federal correctional system. I've also worked as a part of the Queen's University chaplaincy team, and I now find myself at the University of Toronto, providing chaplaincy services, pastoral care to the students and staff there.
That is amazing. That long list of activities and achievements and professional engagements that you've had. I mean, who's better to talk to than someone with a vast experience like yours in different areas of our society? I mean, I'll get right into it. Many of you, for those of you who are just joining us, by the way, if tonight is your first night, my name is Leo Johnson, and I am the Executive Director of Empowerment Square here. So if you're just joining us for the first time, we still welcome, even though tonight is our last episode, but we still welcome you because we have a very great conversation in store. I will get right away to our first question for tonight, Yassine, and it says, so in some religious communities, there is a stigma around seeking help for mental health issues. Why do you think the stigma exists?
Well, it could be for a variety of reasons. Indeed, as they say, the dog barks at that which the dog is unfamiliar with. We usually respond in, a negative way to things that we are not familiar with things that we don't understand. And mental health and mental illness are among the things that not only religious leaders, but most, professional bodies within our society are still struggling to understand. The difficulty in dealing with mental illness or issues that revolve around mental health is that unlike traditional medicine deals with what people have, whether it be, cancer, diabetes, etc. It relates to what we have. Whereas mental illness or mental health issues revolves around what people do, how people respond to the world. And sometimes it can be much different from the way that the majority of the people respond. So therefore, it takes a high degree of creativity and flexibility to be able to deal adequately and justly with people who are having difficulty navigating their way through the difficulty that they may find in a very complex world. So I would say that religious leaders, have a big role to play when it comes to mental health wellness, because religion is primarily about balancing the outer life with the inner life. And when we speak about mental health, we're primarily speaking about how your inner life responds to the outer life.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think that is so deep. I would like to take you a little further to say, why is it so necessary? And I know you hinted at that already, but why is it necessary for this stigma to be addressed, especially within faith-based organizations or religious groups? Because some people may say, you know what, religious groups can deal with it when they can and maybe ignore it if they feel it's convenient to ignore. And in your opinion, as someone who is a person of faith yourself and a faith leader, why do you think it is so necessary and that it's not an option that you can do or not do?
Well, if you want to summarize the role of religion, or you want to summarize how religious leadership should look at their particular vocation, it is to keep your heart busy with God and to keep your hands busy with the people, right? To keep your heart busy with God and keep your hands busy with the people. So keeping your heart busy with God is related to the spiritual dimension of religion. Keeping your hands busy with the people is related to service. So when it comes to people who are struggling, those people who are ill, those people who are destitute, those people who are needy, it is part of the religious vocation to speak to that, to keep our hands busy with that. Because you can really judge a religious community or any other community for that matter based upon how they treat the most marginalized, the most destitute, the most needy, the most hungry, and those who are struggling with mental health issues, right? Religion is about service. And we can even see in the religious history of Canada, we know that the overwhelming majority of churches that were founded in Canada had a very large service dimension. Most of the hospitals that were founded in Canada were founded with some connection to the church. So the religious vocation is related to the inner and the outer. The inner relates to knowing God, to remembering God, and the outer relates to remembering and knowing God through service to the people, including those who are suffering from mental illness and those who are dealing with mental health challenges.
Religious faith is an important source of strength for people who experience stress and mental illness. But beliefs that mental illness is caused by sin or lack of faith or that it can be cured by prayer alone can discourage people from seeking help, add to their suffering, and even contribute sometimes to suicide, as we've seen in some cases. Does seeking help mean that individuals lack faith? If someone has to seek help, rather than just going for prayer alone or solely relying on some of our religious tenets that we all observe, does that mean this person lacks faith or is cursed somehow or has sinned somehow?
The short and long answer is no. However, let me explain. Religion is made up of people. And oftentimes, religion is not necessarily meant for those people who are the most well-adjusted. Religion is for everyone. And religion is there to do what? To anchor us in hope. To anchor us in hope. And we have to remember that, we may ask ourselves, why do bad things happen to good people? Or why do innocent people suffer? In this case, suffer from mental illness or mental health challenges. Perhaps if we knew the answer to that question, we might become indifferent to it. We might become cold to responding to it. If we knew in the wisdom of God why certain people are suffering through no fault of their own. I think the better question to ask, rather than why do bad things happen to good people, in this case, mental illness or mental health challenges, the better question to ask is, what is our response to it? What is our response to it? Are we responding with empathy? Are we responding with mercy? And most of all, are we responding with love? So indeed, religion is meant to plant the seeds of hope in the lives of people. To let people know that, look, you're not alone in this. You have a religious and spiritual community that is present with you. And you have a God that is closer to you than your jugular vein. So therefore, as long as those conditions remain, there is hope. This is what we need to project. And as well, there is this tendency among religious leaders to practice what is called spiritual bypassing. Spiritual bypassing. If someone is going through some mental health challenges, they may be dealing with depression, dealing with anxiety, sometimes religious leaders may be inclined to say, yes, it's because you're not praying enough. It's because your belief is not complete. Or perhaps just recite this prayer and everything will magically go away. We have to be careful as religious leaders because people have real problems. And we have to make sure that we don't become engaged in spiritual bypassing to offer some kind of hocus pocus for people without actually dealing with their practical problems and how they feel, right? Because again, the goal of religious communities in dealing with this phenomenon of mental health is not to help people get over their mental health issues or their mental health challenges, but rather it is to help them get through it with faith and with hope. Again, it is not the goal to get over it, but the role of religious leaders and religious communities is to help them get through it.
I will go on here a little bit and say, yourself, giving your experience and giving your work, Yasin, what advice will you give to individuals currently living or dealing with mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, and they believe that is the lack of faith that's the reason why they're experiencing such things? Now, I say this because we've seen in many cases where when some religious leaders give advice to people, maybe saying recite this prayer or just do this, and sometimes go as far as actually stopping them from seeking help from qualified professionals who might be able to support them. So people are caught between the scissors that, do I disobey my religious, because that's how people interpret it. Would I be disobedient to my religious leaders if I go to the hospital or if I see a mental health professional who might actually be able to help me? What advice would you have for someone dealing with a situation like that?
We can't forget that religions ultimately are interpreted by people. And people are generally fallible. Religion is interpreted by people, and generally people can be fallible. Even those within the medical profession. The medical profession is made up of people who are sometimes fallible, who are not perfect. So perhaps I can encapsulate this in a story. During the time of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who is seen as the last prophet and messenger of Islam, a man visited him at his mosque in Medina. And the man entered the mosque and greeted Prophet Muhammad, on whom be peace, and sat down. So Prophet Muhammad asked him, "How did you travel to the mosque?" And the man replied, "I traveled on my camel," which was the primary means of travel in 7th century Arabia. So Prophet Muhammad, on whom be peace, asked him, did you tie your camel? Did you tie your camel? And the man said, I did not tie my camel. I trust in God. I did not tie my camel. I trust in God. So Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessings be upon him, replied and said, go back outside, tie your camel, and trust in God. Go back outside, tie your camel, and trust in God. You see, life is about balance. Our spiritual life, our life that revolves around healthcare, it's all about balance. So therefore, we have to take the best of what each of these groups have to offer so that we can find solutions that are not temporary, but solutions that are lasting, that are healthy, and that are life affirming. And God knows best.
This, as alluded to the last question that I just asked you, there's this perception of those with mental health with mental health issues in faith-based organization that is sometimes negative. There's a negative perception. There are people who look at them, and sometimes you can tell that people are not comfortable with them, or for whatever reason have this negative perception. What can faith-based organizations do to address the stigmatization of mental health?
Well, first of all, we have to be a part of the conversation. And we have to look at our own history as religious communities and extract the best from our tradition related to serving people. Within the Muslim world, there is a long tradition of serving people who are dealing with mental illness, mental health challenges. In fact, there is a very rich literature about the use of art in treating depression and other mental health illnesses. There's also a very rich tradition of music therapy in helping someone who finds a lack of balance in their life to regain that balance. Some of the most well-known hospitals in Muslim majority countries were founded by spiritually minded doctors who saw spiritual health as related to physical health and psychological health. So we have to look at our tradition and extract the best of our tradition and apply it in its proper context. I recall when I was living in Morocco some years ago, there was a young man that we always used to see in the Medina, in the old city where we used to live. And it was quite clear that the young man was dealing with some mental health challenges. We saw him most of the time, speaking to himself, running back and forth. His rhythm was different, okay? And when we inquired about the young man, we asked some of the locals about his situation. They were very open, they were very honest and clear and said, yeah, he's dealing with some mental health issues. Some said that, yes, he was dealing with a form of schizophrenia. But I noticed that whenever we saw him, he was doing his thing, okay? When it came time for lunch or dinner, it was beautiful. Whenever we saw him, we would always see him having a nice, generous meal on some steps somewhere or outside someone's door. He was eating his belly full, but as soon as he finished his lunch or dinner, he was back, he was back running, talking to himself, etc. And again, the lesson I learned from this is that, we have to make sure that when it comes to dealing with the human family, that we deal with the human family anchored in love. Because the people of that community, they didn't reject him. They didn't shun him. They didn't chase him away. They understood that our brother, our young brother, is dealing with some challenges. So they made sure that he had his space to do his thing. And they made sure that he was fed, that he was taken care of, that he had somewhere warm to sleep. Many of the people, they took turns making sure that he had somewhere warm to sleep, because you may think that some parts of Morocco are always hot. Not true. The winter can be very cold up in the mountains.
Yep.
So they took care of him because they projected love. And this young brother, who, although dealing with these mental health challenges, he received it and he felt loved. So it really comes from this space. So if religious communities can revisit this whole idea of stigma and taboo related to mental health, if we can revisit that and change our attitude and change our approach, then perhaps we can, reclaim our place as being an abode of safety for those people who are struggling, not only spiritually struggling, but having mental health issues, having emotional issues, and those type of challenges. And God knows best.
Religious groups or faith-based organizations and the mental health system should be working together at some level. And how will you envision this type of collaboration? Again, in different ways and forms, because different institutions will lend themselves differently.
Well, number one, we have to get to know each other. And we need those in the field of mental health care and in the field of religious knowledge. We need them to get to know each other, get comfortable in each other's space, and have a system of referral. Because of course, our community is growing in diversity every year. So of course, when it comes to being a very effective mental health care practitioner, you have to get to know the people properly, understand their background, understand their faith traditions. So it's very, very important to connect with religious institutions. And that should be a very important question when it comes to making an assessment. Religious leaders as well have to understand the ins and outs of the healthcare system, especially mental health services that are available. We have to get comfortable. We have to get to know the people, and perhaps it might be useful as religious institutions to, break out of the box, right? And recognize that religion in our context needs to be defined in a much broader way. That religious institutions are not only there to provide people a place to pray, but again, it is a place, a hub for people to be served, whether religiously, medically, etc. So our imams, our ministers, our priests, our rabbis, etc., they have to become an every man and every woman, right? They have to understand that their vocation is not only about, the traditional dimensions of religion, but rather they relate to, completing the human being. And to complete a human being, spiritually or otherwise, means to get to know all of those institutions that also are in the business of service.
Very, very important points there. Again, as always, thank you so much for being with us tonight, Yassine. I couldn't imagine, I know we overlook these conversations at times, but what advice will you give to Muslims who are growing to embrace their religion, but apprehensive of the negative light that is usually cast on Islam and the impact of this on their mental health?
That's a very good question, Sister Fatima. You know, there is a verse in the Quran which reads, "Indeed, in the messenger of God," meaning Muhammad, peace be upon him, "you have an excellent example for those who believe in God, those who believe in the last day, and those who remember God much." And when an enemy or when a challenge comes to them, they say, "This indeed is the promise of God and his messenger, and the promise of God and his messenger are true." And after all of that, they increase in faith, submission, and surrender to God. So if you have gotten to a point in your life where you feel that it's time to begin to be more observant, to learn more about your religion, to learn more about your tradition, to establish your prayers, to start fasting a bit more, to give more charity, to learn more of the Quran. If you've come to that conclusion, understand that that is a light that you have been gifted by God, and that no one of the creation can extinguish that light. So therefore, be confident, be hopeful, and recognize that we come from God, and only to him we will return, and only to him we will have to answer to. And God knows best.
But once again, I've been having a beautiful conversation with my own big brother, Yasin Dwyer, who is the Executive Director of the Muslim Chaplaincy of Toronto. And I'm Leo Johnson, the Executive Director of Empowerment Square.